everyone for coming to the official launch of Ricochet, Canada's newest and most interesting media project. We are, of course, guests in this territory, so I want to acknowledge our hosts, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, on whose traditional territories we are, and whose territories were never ceded or surrendered. I also want to acknowledge the Heartwood Cafe for allowing us to have our event here. And of course, anytime throughout the night, please continue to get up, grab some food, grab some drinks, and support this awesome venue. I also want to thank the supporters of Ricochet, many of whom are the people in this room. I know that a lot of you, if not all of you, have already contributed to get Ricochet off the ground. We had an extremely successful, crowdfunder a few months ago, raising over $80,000, most of which is going towards building our website, which just went live today. Still got a few quirks, but it's getting there. It's gorgeous. And it is the result of a genius mind out in Montreal, a very young lad who has done our groundwork. I also want to acknowledge the support of different organizations and institutions, including unions such as the BCGEU. So we're very fortunate to have support from these kinds of groups. And of course, I want to encourage all of you to keep contributing. One of the main ideas behind Ricochet is that we're going to be supported by individuals like you who give in small amounts or larger amounts, but do so on a continuing basis to allow us to sustain our operations and to keep growing and getting better. We, even in our preview period, have already put out several stories, which I hope you had a chance to take a look at. Today we have, I think, at least 4 new articles that have gone up to coincide with the launch. And there will be more to come, better stuff, more stuff as we develop and get more funding. Oh, and of course I want to plug our membership. So if you're not yet a member, you can become one for $50 a year or for $5 per month. Or if you really want, you can give $300 and get a lifetime membership. Lifetime. So that could be during your lifetime, Ricochet's lifetime, whichever. And now I'm going to turn the mic over to my colleague, Melissa. And I failed to introduce myself, didn't I? I'm Erin. I'm one of the editors of Ricochet.
Erin is a very, very important part of Ricochet, an editor, our copy editor. And I also want to introduce some other really important folks. Johanzo, who's taking photos for us tonight. He's a very talented writer. He's got a series up on Ricochet right now that you should read. Mihail, stand up! Come on. Also a very talented writer and columnist. And then we have Derek O'Keefe, who's at the door. And you can sign up for memberships with Derek at the door. And we're also accepting cash donations if you got any extra change. Derek's actually one of the founding editors, and so a really, really important part of this publication. And the idea behind this publication is that we pay writers and writers first. And I think that's been really successful through the preview period. And something that I'm really excited about is finding new writers for the publication who are especially youth, Indigenous, POC, queer identified. We want to democratize media, and that's really important to Ricochet. And therefore, one of the things we're also really excited to announce is that we fundraised above and beyond our target. And everything above and beyond went towards earmarking for an Indigenous Reporting Fund. That we are so excited to have a new editor, Leena. Leena, come up here. Who some of you may know of the Red Wire, and she used to be involved with the Red Wire.
When I was a youth.
when she when she was just slightly younger. She's so young. And she's going to be helping us with the Indigenous Reporting Fund, and she's got an amazing presentation for you this evening. And so there it is. Actually, we used to do a lot of our Red Wire shows here, so it's kind of nice to be back in this space. Thank you everybody here for giving us space, and also always want to acknowledge Tsleil-Waututh must be in my first territory. I wanted to actually just do like something quick and punchy so we can get back to the awesome music being played. So I'm pretty happy to be involved. Derek sat me down, we had a meeting about this. I don't know, how many months ago, Derek, was it?
3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months ago. And he was talking about this idea of having an Indigenous Reporting Fund, and specifically an Indigenous editorial and bringing on journalists. And so I was like, yes, I haven't done reporting for a while. And I've been in the mainstream too, besides where I was working for CBC and also ABTN at one time. And, it was sometimes hard days to get voices and representations. So I want to talk to you about the Indigenous Reporting Fund, which I want to like bargain to see if we can earmark everything after. When does it stop being earmarked? So for money, I think you guys, if you want to, just say it's going towards this, and I think it'll get to that place. So I want to talk to you about the importance of Indigenous investigative news at this time in Canada as we talk. Next slide. Okay, so why the heck does media matter? Of course, it's the 4th pillar of democracy. People have the right to think and speak as they wish. A lot of times in our own communities, there's some silence that happens, but the silence is starting to spread across Canada, I think, in a lot of different communities as well, where people are kind of being stifled with their opinions. So the next slide kind of shows you the state of the 4th pillar at this time. We all know that media democracy is really hard to do in Canada when you have corporate media kind of determining what people hear and why they tend to get people to hear only that. So Ricochet is going to be awesome about getting the stories that are not told elsewhere, and so I'm really happy to be part of this. Next slide. Just to give you a little overview of what it looks like in Canada. So around 600 First Nations in Canada. That's not precise, it's like 580 something. But across this entire map, this is actually an old map. This doesn't even show you all the 600 First Nations. But if you can imagine about having to report on all these issues, because they're unique, the unique land spaces and unique cultures and unique traditions that come with each territory, and those territories come with unique ecology systems and economics. So it's pretty hard to cover all that area. So usually, next slide, when you see mainstream journalists looking at 600 First Nations, they're kind of like, what the fuck? How do I cover all these things? And you don't get to learn it in J school. You don't get to learn these things in journalism school. As people don't even get to learn them in usually elementary or middle school or high school either. So it's very daunting for people, I understand that. Next slide. And then you add on top of all these 600 First Nations different treaties that happen in Canada. And of course, all the treaties that are pre-Confederation, and there's treaties after Confederation, and there's treaties that haven't been signed yet as of today, with a lot of treaties in BC. So again, you look at the journalists today, and then next slide, and they're still confused. And so I really want to say that post-Island No More, people have been really ramping up their Indigenous and Aboriginal content. I think it was a lot of pressure on people to kind of make changes and realize, oh crap, we need to actually get people whose voices are on the ground and actually know this stuff. So next slide. What are the major issues of today? Well, resource extraction, big corporate business, environment, poverty, health, education, and really these are all Indigenous issues that aren't being talked about through an Indigenous voice lens. So, next slide. How many Indigenous investigative reporters exist today? Does anybody want to take a guess?
0.
I'm actually happy to say that. Oh, get closer. I'm happy to say it's not 0 anymore.
Good.
I'm really, really happy to say that. So 2014, I can say that for sure. And remember, this represents 600 First Nations across Canada. Could you go to the next slide, please? And out of all these Indigenous reporters, like how many like people or projects or programs do you think are represented in this entire thing? And so these are the only ones that I know that actually cover Indigenous news in some substantial way at this time. Next slide. So right now, I'm happy to say that Haiti did this since it started, and I was there at the inception at Media Democracy Day. They do support a few placements and stories per year to Indigenous journalists, which I'm very happy. They work with people in BC, specifically on BC issues. ABTN Investigative News Division just started a few years ago. It happened after I actually left ABTN. There's a total crew of 7 investigative reporters and producers, and they kind of switch hats. So that was a whole entire TV station, and they only have 7 dedicated investigative journalists. The rest are doing quick clips for news and TV. CBC News Aboriginal, just last year, post Idle No More, devoted 5 reporters to the News Aboriginal. Before then, it was just proliferated with reposts of their own content that happened to have quotations in. And with those 5 reporters, it doesn't mean they're just working on Aboriginal investigative news. They're actually doing radio, web, and TV as well. So they have so much on their plate. And when you go to the Special Investigations Unit, it is 0, unfortunately. So, Canvas Global, I know they do 1 mentorship for journalist student per summer, and they've always done that for a long time, but that's not really investigative news, although maybe you could ask. And of course, as you know, there's lots of independent magazines that are happening everywhere that I'm really proud of, but it doesn't cut your teeth and get yourself in a mainstream way out there to people who actually need to know and be educated about it, who don't know. So, next slide. So there's 12 journalists and 2 placements for over 1.4 million people in Canada. If you can tell this, all the brown parts, I'm glad I made it brown, are Native people across Canada. It could have made it red, but anyways. So that's not so much, right? So we kind of need this, and Ricochet is really, really a really important place to kind of get this going with independent media. So next slide. Okay, so we have Ricochet Indigenous Reporting Fund. Yay! Thank you so much. And this is an official statement. Ricochet believes that dedicating significant financial resources to reporting on Indigenous issues is an essential part of creating a more democratic media landscape in Canada. To this end, we've created the Indigenous Reporting Fund, which will prioritize support for Indigenous journalists undertaking investigative reporting projects. It's not solely for Indigenous journalists. We try to prioritize those voices, as I said. There are some people who are really professionally experienced in these issues as well. Next slide. So, we had 17 hours left at Indiegogo, and we got about $7,945, which is great. But if you guys want to give more, please, I want you to be able to write down and say Indigenous Reporting Fund, or tell your friends to do that, or your bosses, or your coworkers, and it'll definitely go to that reporting fund specifically. And so you can contribute to the voices that need space and time and opportunity to tell these stories and really share these stories and build a bridge with people who don't have this knowledge in the mainstream Canadian issues. We can make sure that people are more informed about Aboriginal peoples, their issues, and land. And I just made some jokes because I lived in the States for a while, and I like to take cheap shots at Americans. So. And I want to end with the Mark Twain quote: if you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed, and if you read the newspaper, you're misinformed. So I don't want that to be the state of Canadian journalism today, and I think Ricochet is really here to make a difference and make that difference. Thank you.